Oh, hello there. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, joining us on the Reality After Show YouTube channel or joining us live on Twitter. Yes, we are officially live on Twitter, which is always such a good time. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you be, however you may be listening, or if you're listening on the archived episode. If you're not joining us live, that's okay. We love you all the same. Don't worry about it. Right now, we got a whole lot to talk about today. It is going to be a very, very busy show, a very day here on the Reality After Show. Not only do we have Gabe's big move, but we're also going to be talking, myself and Johnny Fairplay, to Raymond Bledsoe of Cagayan and Cambodia at 9 p.m. tonight. So make sure you stick around the channel. Make sure you keep checking Reality After Show, my accounts, Johnny's accounts, for updates on when that interview is going to start. The hopeful start time is going to be 9 p.m. I know it's a bit later, but don't worry. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be a great time. All right. Us, me, Johnny, Raymond, talking Survivor, talking season 50, and talking about a really, really cool project that Raymond's been working on and that I think is going to see the light of day sometime soon. I believe this year. Don't quote me on that. We'll get a definite answer later from the man himself, but please be sure to stick around for that Raymond Bledsoe interview. It's going to be really, really fun. I can't wait for that. As always, I like to leave some time at the end of the episode for a little bit of Q&A. So please, whether you're watching us on Twitter, whether you're watching us on YouTube, on the Reality After Show YouTube channel, subscribe if you're over there. If you're listening on Twitter, if you don't follow me, go ahead, give me a follow. Helps the algorithm, helps the channel and the show grow, of course. So please don't hesitate to go ahead and throw some love on both the channel and on some of my personal pages, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Instagram, whatever it may be. But like I was saying, go ahead, throw your comments in the comment section. I always like to leave some time at the end for some Q&A. It's a really, really fun way that I can interact with everybody at the end of the show. It can be about the topic of the evening, which we're going to get into in just a couple minutes here. It can be something about my time on Survivor, about 47. It could be something about casting. It could be something about season 50. It can be something about a whole nother show. Whatever you want to know, just go ahead and throw it in the comment section over the course of this episode. Doesn't matter what platform you are watching us from. All right, let's get in to tonight's episode. Now, I want to talk about the overarching theme of this episode is going to be about public perception of Survivor players and how that public perception has changed over time and how that perception has changed and affected the way that people play the game. I think it's a fascinating topic to get into. And I think it's something that has seen so much evolution over the 25 years that Survivor has been on the air. But there's one thing that we got to talk about before we get into that. And I do think that it does tie in to a lot of what we're discussing here. Now, the court jester of season 47, if you don't know who I'm talking about, you probably haven't watched the season in the first place, has decided to start yapping again. Now, we've thrown a couple jabs at each other on Twitter in the past, and it's always ended with this guy running away. And I don't understand. Now, if you don't know who I'm talking about yet, I'm talking about Rome Cooney. There is only one. I got to give him credit for that. There is nobody I know in my life quite like Rome Cooney, but I don't understand. I just feel like this dude, he came from battle rap and he comes from esports, which is like this highly competitive community. And it has this, both of those communities, battle rap and esports, have this really fun and really cool WWE aspect to it, right? Where you have rivalries and storylines and trash talk and all this and that. And he talked so much smack on the island. And yet, when, I try to engage with that on social media, he always seems to run in the other direction. I've been blocked by Rome for months now on Twitter, and yet he still wants to try and throw jabs and talk smack to me when I'm blocked and I can't even directly respond. He's not adding me. He's not tagging me in these tweets, right? I don't know if it's because he's scared. I don't know if it's because he doesn't know how to do that. I genuinely do not know. But let's take a look at the tweets. I'll give you my brief response on it, and then we're going to move on and talk about what I really want to talk about tonight. But I know folks are asking me to talk about this, so I'm going to share my screen here, which is something I have not had to do on StreamYard quite yet. But I'm going to share my screen so we can all look at these tweets together, right? Let me pull them up first. So here was the tweet, 10:38 a.m. today. Everybody should be able to see that. I apologize if the text is too small. But the quote from Mr. Rome Cooney earlier this morning, realizing you're instantly becoming a forgotten Survivor player got you talking shit on podcasts now, huh? With a laughing emoji. Now, this is something, again, I pretty much picked up instantly that it was about me because Rome is a huge fan of subtweeting. He doesn't like adding people. He doesn't like standing on business. He doesn't like just saying it to your face. I don't know why, but that's his decision and his problem to worry about, not mine. The owner and proprietor, the Vince McMahon of the Reality After Show Network, responded and said, "Don't make me put Say on my network too. Hey, Say, ... And Rome responded and said, "She wouldn't be struggling to get 500 views on a pod like your boy talking about me. Say is the farthest thing from a forgotten Survivor. You can't compare people that broke confessional records to ... Damn, what he do again? Question mark, laughing emoji." So let's get into that real quick, right? First off, damn, what he do again? Got a merge buff, something that you failed to do. Sat on the jury and got to vote for the winner. Rachel deserved, one of the best winners of the new era. Something that you failed to do. Formed meaningful alliances in the game that actually went relatively deep into the game. Something that you failed to do. And actually garner the respect and appreciation of my fellow castmates and other people within the Survivor community. Also something that you failed to do, right? But I don't want to get into the intricacies of my game because, to be frank, I don't like talking about my game, particularly not in public settings, unless I am directly asked about it. Because obviously, I'm the most biased person in the world, right? I think that I played a great game. I'm very proud of the game that I played. But where I do like to go when people ask me about my game and people ask me what they think about how I played is I direct them to the people that I played with. I think that is the most honest and reliable account of somebody's Survivor game is the people they played with. And obviously there's a lot of bitterness that comes in to many different casts of Survivor. There's a lot of favoritism that comes into many casts of Survivor as well. But I think that those are the only people who have a true, proper perspective of anybody who played a game of Survivor are the people that played alongside them on the island, in my case, in Fiji. So I want to look at what some people said about me when we were out in Fiji, and then I want to look at what some people said about Rome when he was out in Fiji with us. And I pulled these quotes from both of our boot episodes, respectively. So this is what people were saying about me when I was going to be voted out, and what people were saying about Rome when he was going to be voted out. I think this is a pretty accurate telling of what exactly the perception of our respective games were by our fellow Survivor competitors, right? So let's start with me. This is the episode where I got booted off. These are quotes that I pulled. I think that they're a pretty honest representation after watching back on both episodes of what the sentiment of both of us were. Starting with me, Sam. Gabe is such a big threat in this game because he is the leader of Tuku, and once you get him out, you kind of blow up that Tuku alliance. Sam again. I would love, love, love to get Gabe out of the game right now. He is a massive strategic force. Caroline. I love the relationship I have with Gabe, but the track record of the merge votes, Gabe has played a better game than me. Caroline again. If Gabe is in the final three, he wins. Kyle. The only reason I feel I shouldn't vote out Gabe is because he's the only bigger threat than me. Rachel, eventual winner. You're the biggest threat out here, and we would be fools not to do this while we can. So that right there is a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quotes that came directly from the episode, verbatim quotes of what people were saying about me when I was on my way out the door. I think you get the message that I'm trying to get, that I'm trying to pass along here, right? Now let's take a look at what people were saying about Rome when he was on his way out the door in Fiji before we got merge buffs, before anybody got to sit on the jury. Genevieve, Rome thinks Saul is the plan. Unbeknownst to Rome, Rome is the plan. Sam, hey, that's great, Rome. You keep throwing Saul's name around. Kyle, I ain't ever working with Rome. He buried himself. Teeny, everyone say who you're voting for in a circle. Sam, Rome. Genevieve, Rome. Rachel, Rome. Kyle, what a dick. Andy, in German, I like you, but your game was really bad. Goodbye, my friend. Teeny again. I think everyone has finally caught up to the way I feel about you while she was writing his name down. Kyle, fuck Rome. I think, again, you get the idea that I'm trying to pass along here. So if you want to talk about what I did on 47, if you want to talk about, if I'm a forgotten survivor or not, I'm not super interested in getting into those debates. I just say, watch the show. Just watch the show and talk to people that played with us and listen to the quotes that they had to say about our respective games. And I don't think there's much of a conversation there. One of these list of quotes is laden with respect and admiration and fear of what my game could have done to other people. And the other list of quotes is a joke. It's all a joke, right? And I mean, if you look at the way that production viewed both of those episodes, one of those episodes was my boot episode, which was built up as Gabe versus Genevieve, and which one of those two is going to go home. And I think the writing was on the wall that I was going home for a lot of the reasons that my fellow castaways listed. But it was a competitive episode. It was an episode that had tension. It was an episode that had drama. It was an episode that was built around one power player leaving the game. If you look at Rome's boot episode, it was a court jester episode. That's just what it was. I'm not trying to be overtly harsh. I'm not trying to step on the guy. Anybody can watch that episode, and any sane person's honest opinion coming out of that will be that was hilarious. They really dunked on that guy. It was just a joke. He was a pariah on the island. He got voted out in, I don't want to say a shameful way, but got voted out in a unanimous way that everybody was not worried about Rome potentially winning the game. Nobody saw Rome as this big power player that we needed to boot off the game. And if we don't, then he could run this thing all the way to the end because he has a strong alliance and he has influence over what's happening in the game. No, we talked about this on our What Does It Mean to Be a Survivor Villain episode, which everybody should go check out. It's a great episode. You can go tune into the archived episode on the Reality After Show YouTube channel. He's just a nuisance. And this behavior on Twitter that we're seeing is a further example of just being a nuisance and just being somebody that is existing with thin skin, that has this desperation for the limelight, and is somebody that I don't know. I don't want to try to sit here and get inside the head of Rome. God forbid. But I just see somebody that got voted out of season 47 because nobody really wanted to play with him. Not because they thought he was going to win, not because they thought that he was this objective threat to anybody's game. It was just being out here on the island with this person is rather unpleasant. And I don't want to keep dealing with that. And I don't know how much of it they showed on the episode. But I know that, like, when we were sitting there at Tribal Council and Jeff was talking a lot to us about what is tonight's vote about, it was, this overarching theme of season 47 that Jeff really, really liked was community. And it was about us building the community of players that we wanted to play with and ousting the people that we didn't want to play with. And I think it's pretty clear to everybody who was watching and who was playing that Rome was one of those people that we didn't want to play with. And I think that still stands to this day, and it's like, hey, man, if you want to sling arrows at me on Twitter and leave me blocked, like, I'm going to have my say about it. And Rome, I know you're watching right now. I know you're watching. You have an open invitation to come on this show. I'll even go on your territory if you want. And you can get all your grievances out. I'll listen to them. I'll respond to them. It doesn't have to be here. You're welcome to come here. I think this would be easy, right? But I'll go on whatever show you want, in person, virtual, whatever you want to do. And you and me can talk about whatever grievances you have. And look, like, when I've been on these shows, for the source of his original tweet, was talking about, like, oh, you're talking shit on podcasts now. I've never said anything personal about Rome. I've just talked about my objective opinion of him as a player, which is what I do for everybody that I discuss on Survivor. And I have more of an insight into Rome because I literally played with him. So I don't need to put this caveat forward that I do for a lot of other people when it comes to talking about Survivor, which is I'm just talking about the highly edited character that's being presented to us on TV. I'm not talking about the person. I'm not talking even about the actual Survivor player that they were. But when it comes to Rome, when it comes to everybody on 47, I do have this rather personal insight into how this person played. I was only with Rome on the island for a couple of days because he was the first person voted out after we all got on the same island. But I'm sorry. I don't think there is any comparison between what I did in Fiji and what Rome did in Fiji. And hey, I'll be honest. I'll be totally honest. I think Rome probably has a better chance of getting called back on the show than I do. Right. I got no calls for 50. I have no problem acknowledging that. But I think the reason for that is not because people are like, we need to see what Rome can do if he gets back in Fiji. It's like, no, we just all want to laugh at this guy, bumble around and be a fool and, you know, have these egotistical confessionals that blow up in his face episode after episode. Like, that's fun for a lot of people to watch. It's not very fun for me to watch. I like high level gameplay. I like cerebral gameplay. I like seeing bust ups happen that are actual personal conflicts and not people just bullying somebody else, not somebody just being a nuisance for the sake of getting screen time. Like, I like legit good Survivor gameplay. And that comes in many different forms, right? In good Survivor TV, I think Gabon is one of my favorite seasons. But it's because it's not just people hunting down screen time and trying to hopefully get called back to the show one day. Those people had legitimate beef out there, right? 46 is another great example of that. Or just good gameplay. So, I mean, look, that's where I stand with this. I don't want to harp on it too much more for the show. I already spent more time on it than I would have liked to be totally honest with you. But yeah, if you're going to sling arrows at me, tag me, unblock me so I can respond to you, right? I think it's very silly, very immature, the way that he went about it today. And hopefully he doesn't do it again. But if he does, I'll be right back on here, slinging arrows right back, because that's just how I roll. So getting in to the topic of tonight's episode, public perception of Survivor players and how that's changed over the years and how that's changed the way that people play over the years. And this is actually what we were talking about to start this episode, I think is a pretty good segue into this topic that I want to get into now. So a lot of younger fans, right, who didn't quote unquote grow up with the show, who weren't there in season one, I know that most people have a grasp, but I don't know if they quite have a full understanding of just how big of a deal Survivor was when it first started. Now, obviously, the people that were there do, but I mean, when Survivor first started out, it was like people were national superstars. Like Boston Rob and Amber were on the cover of magazines when that was the height of being a media personality. It was being on the cover of People magazine. Like they were there, you know. Johnny Fairplay, and I'm not just saying this because he brought me onto his channel, was a national superstar. I mean, that was a dude who was everywhere he went, people knew him. We talked to Jerry a few weeks ago, and she detailed her being a superstar, but kind of in a negative way, where people would yell at her in traffic and people would call her all different kinds of names and stuff like that. You know, when she was just walking around minding her business and the way that it affected her acting career for the worse. And the reason that I bring that up is because like the spectrum of effect that being on Survivor had in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s was a really big deal. I mean, it could crater your everyday life or it could skyrocket you into national stardom. And it's not even close to that anymore, right? Like I would go as far to say that Survivor is a rather niche interest for people nowadays. I mean, I can't tell you how many people since I've been through the casting process and on the show and now off the show that when I tell them about it, their first response is, people still watch that? Like, that's a very, very common thing that I hear from people. And look, I don't get offended by that. Like, I agree. I totally agree. It's not even close to the behemoth that it used to be. And yet, and yet, what has changed about fame and about this media landscape and TV and just pop culture in the United States and the world, but for our purposes, the United States in general, is that you don't need the industry to become famous anymore. For years and years, for 100 years in Hollywood, there was a handful of boardrooms with a handful of people in them, and they decided who got to be famous. They decided what you were going to do, when you were going to do it, how you were going to do it, and if you were going to do it. And that was the standard for damn near 100 years, from the early beginnings of Hollywood in the 20s up until like 2015, 2016, 2017. And now social media has become this behemoth that it is today. That those boardrooms and the industry doesn't have the gatekeeping abilities that they have grown accustomed to over the last 9, 10 decades. And so while, yeah, you probably aren't going to be on late night television if you're a big time Survivor player, you're not going to be on the cover of magazines. Not that anybody really cares about that anymore if you're a big time Survivor player. So yeah, you've lost that avenue, right? You're not going to be a national superstar anymore if you hit it big on Survivor. But I think there are a lot of people who would say, do you even need to? Does it even matter? And I think that's a very valid and interesting question to ask, because now you can tap in to these very, very niche demographics, these very niche fan bases, and tap into them so intimately and so directly that you can reach 30,000 people, 40,000 people that are all watching a TV show that most people are saying, who even watches that show anymore? And that's something that's very new. So when you were going on Survivor before, it was like, I need to have this mass national level appeal. I need to be somebody that everybody loves, whether you're a 60-year-old white man, whether you're a 21-year-old black woman, whether you're whoever. I need to be able to appeal to the entirety of the United States if I really want to capitalize on this, for better or for worse. But nowadays, that doesn't quite matter. It's like, I just need to find my little nook in this community, in this reality TV world. If I can find my little nook, and if I can rack up 10, 15, 20,000 followers online, like, I'm good. I can make a lifestyle out of that. And that's something that's very new, and it's something that I think a lot of people are kind of trying to figure out how to navigate on the fly. And this comment right here from Rhea, thank you for the comment, Rhea. Survivor is interesting now since it's not traditionally famous like Hollywood used to be, but the community is so accessible with social media and podcasts that it has a similar effect of fame. I think that's an excellent way to put it. You should be co-hosting the show with me. And a big part of this is that these folks who end up on these reality TV shows, the reality TV community is so entrenched in virtual spaces, on Twitter, on Reddit, on Instagram, in these podcast spaces like we're on right now. Like that is where the diehard fans of reality TV exist. And to be able to tap into that so directly and so intimately is a very powerful thing. And so if you're going on Survivor nowadays, what's changed is like, I don't need to be loved by everybody, right? Because not everyone's watching me anymore. Before it was everyone's watching me, the entire country, back when it was on Wednesdays, or excuse me, back when it was on Thursdays. At 8 p.m., the entire country was sitting down in front of their TVs with their whole families to see what Boston Rob was going to do this week, to see what Richard Hatch was going to do this week, to see what Surrey was going to do this week, Parvati, whoever. It ain't like that anymore. Now I just got to tap in to the people that I know are watching and the people that are engaging with the show, which is something that also did not exist for the last 80 odd years of Hollywood media, television, and movies, is the fact that now I can directly see who's taking time out of their day to engage with what we're doing on this show. And those are the people that I want to target. Those are the people who I want to tap into. Those are the people that I want to look forward to following me on all my different social accounts so that maybe I can get a brand deal. Maybe I can start my own freaking podcast, guilty of that, or whatever it may be that you want to do with this bump that Survivor gives you, right? And I'm very intrigued to see how this continues to develop. But I think it's something that has the potential to poison the well of the show a little bit. And it is something that I worry about. If you look at a show like Love Island, or not Love Island, Love is Blind, right? If you look at a show like Love is Blind, that is a show that has been totally corrupted by people just trying to be famous, right? Like that is what that is now. It's just people who want to get on the show, who want to cash in and get 50,000 followers on Instagram, maybe more, and go get a brand deal and go be an Instagram influencer. And like, I'm not even directly knocking that. Like, if that's your hustle, go do that. And if it works for you and if you can become the influencer that you want to be, like, hey, that's awesome. But for the sake of the show, Love is Blind, like, I think it's borderline unwatchable now, unless you really just want to take in, like, some trash reality TV and see people yell and argue at each other and cry and whatever. And for some people, they like that, and that's totally fine. Go tune in. But like, you can't tell me that the spirit of the show still exists, that it's people going on trying to find love and trying to engage in this experiment of like, is love is blind? And yeah, I'll get married to this person after knowing them for 5 weeks or however long it is. Like, no, that's not what that show is anymore. And it's because of what I'm talking about with this desire and this knowledge that if I get on here and if I'm on the show for a few weeks, like, I can cash in on this and turn this into a lifestyle for me. And I worry a little bit about that happening to Survivor, because we're already seeing people make it onto the show that are just there for screen time and are just there to get called back, right? I mean, you know, I'm not rehashing this, but like, it's very obvious to a lot of people, like, Rome just wanted to be on screen as much as he could and is hoping that one day he can get called back and take over for Jeff when he retires. Like, it wasn't about the game, in my opinion, from what I perceived from Rome. And I think there are plenty of people who fall into that category, right? I mean, there was a very popular rumor, and I've never had this confirmed, so excuse me if it's not true. Alert, this is just a rumor. I don't know if it's true. But there was a very popular rumor for 46 that if somebody was getting a lot of screen time, Liz would make note of that and tell the other people on the tribe and be like, I didn't come out here to not be on TV. In fact, I think that part at least was like a direct quote from Liz in some interview. And she would target people if they were taking screen time away from her. And again, like, if that's your thing, if that's what you want to do, like, everyone has their own why of why they do something like Survivor. For me, I think it corrupts the spirit of the show, which is we're going to bring these people out here to be representative of the countries, now that Canada's involved, that we live in. And they're all going to play this social strategy game to go try to win $1 million and be sole survivor. Like that is what Survivor's about. That's the core of Survivor. That's the spirit of Survivor. And I think when you start casting people knowingly or unknowingly that are just there to gobble up as much screen time as they can in as many episodes as they can, and then like go start a podcast afterwards or go try to get brand deals on Instagram, like you've corrupted what the show is about. And people are kind of gaming the system and gaming the show, and in a lot of ways gaming the game for their own personal benefit. And a big reason of why I think 47 was such a great season, not to get on, a high horse about my own season, but everybody who made it deep into the game was just there to freaking play, man. I hadn't watched 47. I hadn't watched a single episode of Survivor other than season 48 since the finale of 47 aired back in December. And last night and the night before, I binged through all of 47 in like 2 days. And it was awesome. I can't believe I was dreading it as much as I was. But like that season is a sky-splitting beacon of light in the new era. It is such a damn good season, and I'm not going to get into why I think it's a great season, at least not right now. But I think one of the reasons that it was a great season that pertains to the topic we're talking about is because everybody there just wanted to play Survivor. Like, Genevieve, and I've said this on many different shows, was very famous among our cast for always saying, like, I would rather do this if there weren't cameras here. I'd be happier doing this if the cameras weren't here and it wasn't on TV. And the first couple times I heard that, I was like, that's crazy. Like, come on. But the deeper you get into the game, like the less you care, at least the less I cared about the cameras, the less I cared about what, the public perception of me was going to be, the less I cared about what I could turn this into afterwards. And that was always in the back of my head, and it's in the front of my mind now. But I did hit a point right around the merge where I was like, dude, I just want to win this thing. Like, I don't care. I'm so in love with this game, and I have so much respect for the people that I'm playing with that, like, I want to beat them. That's how much I respect them, because I know if I can beat them, then that means I really, really, really accomplished something here. And obviously I fell short of that goal, but something that came out of that failure was the joy, the elation that I got of like, these people are my family now. I mean, I can say that everybody who made the jury from 47 or like a actual bona fide family. We all love everybody. And there are pre-jurors who are also a part of that. Not quite all of them. There are some pre-jurors that kind of keep their distance. There are some pre-jurors we keep our distance from as a cast. But there's, a handful of pre-jurors from our season who are also part of that family, who are also adored and adore us, and we adore them. And it's like, this very beautiful thing that we have. And we also acknowledge that not every season is like that. And I'd go as far to say maybe it's not even the norm for most seasons of Survivor. So, like, we are very lucky to come out of Survivor with such positivity. And I was talking about this in our group chat the other night after finishing the finale of 47 during this binge watch, was that like what people take away from being on Survivor is such a spectrum. It is such a wide spectrum of from, abject negativity to like the peak of like Mount Olympus positivity. And for so many of us to collectively together fall on the positive end of that spectrum is such a blessing. It really is such a blessing. And that is because of the people that we played with. It is because of the people that were on the island at the same time. And like that is a truly wonderful thing. But again, to link it back to what we're talking about tonight with this whole thing of like, what's the public perception of Survivor players and how has it changed over the years? I mean, look, like a lot of people got to go through dealing with toxic fans, through dealing with your own shortcomings of being out there, through, dealing with your edit if it's not particularly flattering. A lot of people got to do that alone or with just like a couple other people in their corner. And 47's lucky because, everybody who needed somebody to be, who needed someone to be there for them had a big group of people, to be there for them. And like, again, that's just, maybe it's me being on a soapbox right now, just kind of gushing over how much I appreciate my cast, how much I love my cast. But so be it. I want to get that out there. Here's something that I think it's pretty interesting to talk about. Coming from Nick P here. Thank you for the comment. Thank you for tuning in, brother. Hey man, how do players deal with the toxic part of the fan base? I would love to play, but I don't need that negativity in my life. Yeah, it's tough because everybody has their own way to cope. Now, again, I reiterate a lot of what I just got done saying, that I'm very lucky that I had so many people in my season in my corner who were like constantly reaffirming that like it's just toxic fans being toxic fans, and reaffirming like the confidence that I should have and how I played out there and how I conducted myself out there, both as a professional, as a player, as a person, making social connections with people. Um, but like for me, and I've been kind of in a quasi public spotlight for a lot of my young adult career, doing these radio shows across Baltimore City and, stuff like that. I'm at NPR now. Before I was at NPR, I was doing a local radio show here in Baltimore 5 days a week, and I'd have people call in and say like awful things about me, so I had this kind of thick skin and exposure to it. But to me, the toxic anonymous fans on Twitter, on Reddit, on Instagram, whatever it may be, like they're just ants. To me, they're ants. And if you see a bunch of pissed off ants running around on the sidewalk, like you don't get down on the ground and roll around with them. You just keep walking. You're like, oh wow, there's a lot of ants right there, and you just keep walking and you mind your own business. And so that's kind of been my approach to this over, the coming up on a year. We're what, 2 months away, 3 months away from when our season aired. Like they're just ants. And if you get down on the ground and roll around with ants, like, yeah, there'll be a big problem. They'll be all over you. If they're fire ants, they'll bite you. They'll get into your clothes. Like, it'll be a problem. But if you just keep walking and treat them like ants and you just don't acknowledge them, then they can't really get under your skin, literally and figuratively. And I've learned that, over a few years, but definitely being expedited by the process of being on Survivor. And some people aren't good at that. And some people, some casts and a fool are very obsessed with being online and are very caught up in what the ants have to say. And it's like, you do you, but that is not the way that I would handle it. And it's like, yeah, I get you. You got to let it slide off and not take them personally for sure. And that's kind of the cliche. But again, I kind of go back to what we opened the episode with like, Rome talking shit about my game or whatever. Um, like that doesn't bug me in the slightest. I'm going to respond to it because I think it's fun and I'm going to stand up for myself as I would, suggest anybody do. But that doesn't bother me. I'm not going to go to bed thinking like, why does Rome think I played a bad game? Like, because I have so much affirmation from the other people that I played with that I should be confident in how I played. And the way that I think I played was the way that I played. And the reason that I got voted out was because they saw the same thing I saw, which was a path to victory in one or two more votes going my way. And it's like, that's something that is more powerful than anything that I could imagine when it comes to dealing with a toxic fan base or dealing with trolls or whatever it may be, is having the people that went through the same experience with you affirm and validate the confidence and perception you have of yourself when you did that same experience. Like that is nothing could ever break that. And the only thing that could break me is if like Rachel and Genevieve and Sam and Andy and Teeny and Saul and Sierra and Kyle and, all these other people were like, hey, man, like you kind of sucked out there. Like you weren't very good at playing Survivor, or hey, we're kind of an asshole out there. Like if those people were saying that to me, that would hit me very hard because they know, they were the ones who know, they are the ones who decide if I was good at the game. Those are the ones who decide if I was an asshole or if I was worthy of being out there. And for them to have decided that, like, yes, you are a very welcome part of this community and you were good at this game, and the things you were doing were very sound socially and strategically. You just let your threat level get too big and you didn't manage it good enough, which is like, I acknowledge that to the high heavens. My biggest flaw as a Survivor player was that I had terrible threat level management once you got into like that mid, like the mid late game, which is what I call it. Once you get into single digits, it was like my threat level was sky high, and I didn't really see a lot of avenues to get away from it. Again, that's a story for another episode, but like the ants can never get to me. They can never, ever, ever get to me because of the affirmation that I have from the actual people that I played alongside. And that means the world to me. But I do worry a little bit about, the soul of the show, because I see more people popping up who want to take advantage of what Survivor can give you. And, maybe this is like I don't want to sound like a Survivor bootlicker or something here. Johnny's going to kill me if he hears me say this. But people are thinking more about what Survivor can do for them than what like they can do for Survivor. And I don't think that imbalance has been so stark as it's looking to be now. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, like you shouldn't go onto Survivor being like, I'm going to be Jeff's favorite and, whatever they need me to do, I'm going to do and blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that like you should go out there because you want to be a good Survivor player, because you want to actually make a charge to win the game, because you want to be sole survivor. And what you get out of that is $1 million frickin' dollars and all this notoriety from being on a huge TV show. Like those things are great, but you should be pursuing those with the intention of being a good Survivor player and giving this game a great performance and giving this game a great personality and a great character for people to enjoy, for the producers to have a lot of fun with, and for your fellow castaways to enjoy being around and, in the best possible way, hate playing against. And I'm not totally sure that sentiment is as strong over the past 5, 6, 7 years or so as it was for the majority of this show's golden era run. And like that does legitimately worry me a little bit, and like I I don't really know how you solve that other than just being like, uh, you know, have more scrutiny, for lack of a better term, throughout the casting process. And I think that Survivor is aware of that. And I think that, a lot of the people in casting and in production are looking to avoid having people like that on the show. But because so many more of them are applying to be on the show, and just because so many more of them exist, because everybody wants to be freaking famous now, because it's easier than it's ever been before for a lot of the reasons that we already talked about. Like, it's going to be impossible to keep all of them out of the show. And I just hope that, now we as fans can identify those people and make it clear that those are not the kind of people that we want to see on the show. People who are just there to bump up their Instagram following and, move on to the next thing after they finish it. And like there are clear examples of those people existing on the show over the past 5 years. Like, we don't have to run through all of them. They exist. Question here from Brian Kelly, loyal, faithful watcher of the show. Thank you, Brian, for always tuning in and commenting. Is it still worth it to apply these days? Absolutely, it's still worth it to apply these days. For the reason that I'm telling you, we need more people to apply these days who aren't interested in just being an influencer, who aren't interested in just maybe getting called back to play again, or maybe getting to go on another show out there like Deal or No Deal Island or Destination X or, like whatever. Like, we need more people who want to be out there because they want to play Survivor and they want to give something to the fans and to the show. Being a strong game, being a good character with a big personality, and being somebody who, after you're done, is going to put a lot of effort into like being a productive member of the community. And that's something that we haven't really talked about a whole lot. But again, um, one of the things that's changed over the 25 years that this show has existed is that, look, like, these watch parties were not a thing 10, 15 years ago the way they are now. These, Patreon podcasts that Sesternino likes to do where the fans can come on and chat with him and whatever guests they have, that was not a thing 10, 15 years ago the way that it is now. Like, that is something that is very new, and it's something that I think people should be cognizant about when they make it onto the show, is that, like, you should be intentionally trying to be a positive member of that community, and that doesn't mean you need to throw your own watch parties every week. It doesn't mean you need to go to every Bryson Wen. It doesn't mean you need to pop up on everybody's podcast. Like, that can mean just, like, intentionally cultivating positive relationships with your fellow castmates and other alumni and being a positive person to interact with for fans who interact with you positively. And I think that's something else that like has fallen to the wayside a little bit. Not totally. I wouldn't even say in an extreme way, but I think it's something that more people are like, "Oh, hey, if we, fake a showman's, maybe we can ride this Instagram wave for another 5,000 followers." Or, "Hey, if I start tweeting out crazy shit about somebody that I don't even talk to, about something like personal that's like outside of the game, you know, oh, maybe I can get some likes today. Maybe I can start some beef." And like I have fun with all that stuff. For me, like it's just fun. So I like to it's WWE to me. For any of my wrestling fans out there, like for me, it's kayfabe. Deep wrestling term for everybody. But essentially, it just means like, how wrestling's fake? Kayfabe is the word to describe that act of like having these blur the lines of reality, rivalries, and relationships and confrontations and all that. Like all of that is fun for me. For some people, they take it very seriously, and some people really mean it when they want to be nasty to folks online. And I think that while those people existed in this space and were being cast on the show in years past, the technology and the methods to engage with other people in that capacity didn't quite exist. So it wasn't as much of a problem or potential problem as it is today. Well, Kyle Wren just texted me, "Love you, brother." Oh, my guy. I'll text him. I'll give him a call after the show. We're going to wrap up here soon. And like Kyle is one of those people, right? Kyle Wren is one of those people who is just overwhelmingly positive to his fellow castmates. And he's somebody that like we don't even see that much. I don't even see that much. I'm going to be going up to Michigan in a couple months to go see him and a couple other people. And I cannot wait. But like, that's somebody who like, I don't really see a whole lot. I don't talk to a whole lot, but I can receive a text like that from Kyle Wren, just like, "Hey, love you, brother." And I know that when I see him in a couple months, we're going to pick up like we saw each other yesterday. And like, that's kind of the positivity that I hope people who get cast on the show in the future and are recent alumni now are like looking to throw out into the community. And, maybe I'm brainwashed because I just jammed like 15 hours of season 47 into my brain over the last 48 hours. That's not an exaggeration. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. On Sunday, I literally sat on the couch and watched 12 straight hours of season 47 from the premiere until Operation Italy. And Jeff just could not stop talking about the word community. And it's like, bro, what are you even talking about? But I don't want to get too deep into that rabbit hole. But like that community can be a lot of different sizes. Like for me, I think my Survivor community is quite big. I have 260 people tuning in to this podcast right now. I keep in touch with the vast majority of my cast. There are a lot of other alumni from other seasons, particularly New Era seasons, who I love talking to, who I consider good friends, right? But not everybody wants to be that deeply involved. Some people are more like Kyle Renspeed, where they're like, hey, man, I just want to love the people that I love that were on my cast, engage with fans in a positive way, and live my life and go to my job and raise my kids, you know? And so it's like, I'm not saying that you got to be, outside waving a sign saying, I love Survivor and come talk to me about Survivor. Like, the way you positively engage with your community can exist on many, many different levels with many, many different sizes. But yeah, I'm just, I'm into the kayfabe. I love the fake rivalries. I love the WWE stuff. I'm not into the legit negativity though. And I think there are people out there who are more incentivized than ever before to engage in legit negativity for engagement on the other side. And that to me is rather disappointing. That to me is something that I don't know if there is a concrete way that you can steer that out of the game. um but in the same vein, like, again, I think the most useful tool against that are the fans, are people to be like, we don't really want people on here who are just trying to be Instagram stars. We don't really want people on here who are, trying to start feuds for the sake of getting more engagement on Twitter that day. Like, we want people here who care about the game of Survivor, are members of the community, and thus care about the community and want to see it thrive. And I think that the public perception of Survivor players in 2025 is that there is this very direct lens on all of us. The fact that, like, even today, because, I had people starting shit with my name, like, I had people, sending me very rude and nasty things today. Not that it's anything new, and I'm certainly not whining about it. But like that kind of thing is incentivized nowadays. And I think I can't remember whose show I was on, but I was talking about this with somebody. And excuse me, I was talking about this with somebody on somebody's show. I can't remember. It might have been with Johnny. I don't remember. It's not important. But I was talking to somebody about how for the first time, like, fans can really directly engage in the show. And if you see somebody get torn down on an episode of the show, or you see somebody get into a big fight with somebody else on the show, and like that's what you like about these shows, you like the drama, you like the feuds, you like the fights, you like the meltdowns, you like the crying, you like the screaming. When the episode ends, for decades, it was like, okay, the episode is now over, and that's over until I tune in next week and hopefully I get more of it. But now, after the episode ends, you can go on Twitter, you can go on Instagram, you can go on Reddit, and you can keep that going, right? You can have your say about this person having a meltdown. And if you like seeing a meltdown, you can do your small little part to keep that meltdown going and keep getting that dopamine rush long after the episode has ended. And like that's a very new thing. And I don't think people, and certainly not production teams, know quite how to deal with that yet. And maybe there is no way to deal with it. And again, maybe the way to deal with it is just using the support system that you have of the people that you played with. Hopefully you have that if you participated in one of these shows, and lean on that and do your best to ignore the negativity. Like that is the best advice I could give to somebody. And to be frank, I wish there was better advice that I could give to somebody. But it's like, I don't know what exists other than that. You can't block everybody. I don't think it's very useful blocking people in the first place unless they're properly, continuously on a daily basis harassing you. But yeah, like it's tough now. And I think that the question of like what was harder to deal with, what's worse, being in that early to mid 2000s phase where it's like, if you hit it big, if you were Rob, if you were Amber, if you were Colby, if you were Fair Play, if you were Johnny, if you were Rupert, then it's like bang, bang. And now I'm on the cover of People magazine and I'm on late night shows and all this and that. And I'm getting invited to these huge Hollywood parties and blah, 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 blah. But also on the flip side of that, if you're like a Jerry or somebody in a similar vein, it's like I'm getting all of this hate poured on me every single day by what feels like an entire country of people that I don't deserve, that I didn't do anything to warrant other than be casted on a show and be edited a certain way. Like, yeah, like that's crippling. But I think there's a fair argument that nowadays it's so direct and it's so intimate and people can message you directly. People can send you, virtual letters through DMs directly saying like, I hate you, you're worthless, you're this, you're that, blah, 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 blah. And it just feels like it's constant. It feels like it's constant. Like, so, for some people, and for a while, it was like this for me. And again, I'm not whining about this. Like, I feel like I handled it quite well. And I have a lot of confidence and peace with my standing in this community and, my time on the show and in the game. But like, you can't even check your email on your phone without getting an alert of somebody being nasty to you. And that's a new thing. That's a very new thing. So, like, while it is easier today to come out of the game and find meaningful, maybe not meaningful, but useful fame and develop a useful following, it's also easier to be torn down, I think. I think it's also easier to be kind of squashed by people who watch the show and people who engage with the show, and frankly, people who take it a little too seriously. And like that is a new thing that I don't think there's really a good formula on how to deal with that quite yet. And one day I'm sure it will come, or maybe it won't. Like, to be honest with you, I don't know. Um, but yeah, the public perception of being a Survivor player in 2005 is so radically different now than in 2025, in that you're not these big national superstars anymore. Like Rob was, like Amber was, like Jerry was, Fair Play, all those people, Colby. And you don't get the nationwide hate that if you were a quote unquote villain, if you were a hated player, that folks would get back then. But in the same vein, if you're not the biggest name on your season, if you don't go and win, if you don't have a showmance, if you're not this, if you're not that, there is still a way to find a place within this community that you develop a following. And, if that's what's important to you, maybe you can make a little bit of money, or maybe you can just engage with fans in a meaningful way, or maybe you can bring your passions to this fan base that watched you on TV, like somebody who, like, I think is an awesome guy, and I'm not as close with him as I would like to be, for no reason in particular other than we just don't cross paths very often. But somebody who I think is a great example of this is Dwight Moore from season 43. He was somebody who I certainly don't think was like a main character of that season. He ended up getting voted out on like day 14, right? But he's somebody who is doing so much cool stuff within the community. He's doing so much cool stuff on Twitch with his Twitch streams. He's doing so much cool stuff with Blood on the Clock Tower, which is something that I've gotten to be directly involved with over the past couple of weeks, which has been so fun. And like, so that's kind of the cool part of how I think public perception of Survivor players has changed, in that, like, this is a guy who is very passionate about a few very like niche things, and he's able to bring those passions to a wider audience, and he's able to bring this community of Survivor people and players into those passions, and hopefully they develop that same passion, or if they don't, like, they can just be an ancillary part of it. But that to me is like a good success story of modern public perception of Survivor players. I think Dwight is an awesome dude, and I love all the stuff that he's working on, both in like a personal and a Survivor capacity. I think that Hunter from 46 is a dude who I have not met yet. But he's doing this thing down at the school that he works at, and he's pretty much doing like a Survivor Squid Games crossover. And that's something that he, I believe, would not be able to do with the capacity that he's doing if it wasn't for his time on Survivor. And like, yeah, he was a big character on that season. He was my ninth place brother, right? Me and Hunter went out in the same spot. And that's somebody who is doing really, really cool stuff without having to be the winner, without having to be this big superstar out of his season, but he's still able to do cool stuff that I don't think would have been as possible in 2005 as it is in 2025, right? But then, like I said, you get some negative examples. You know, you get people like Liz, who's out there to just be on TV and gobble up a bunch of screen time. You get people like Rome, who just want to be on TV and get called back and go on other shows and gobble up a bunch of screen time. And it's like, you know, as I'm doing this episode, I'm kind of talking myself into the fact that maybe that's just the necessary evil of how the world and media and Hollywood and social media works nowadays. But I mean, I don't know. I always do my best to try to over focus on the things that I'm grateful for, over focus on the gratitude that I feel for the people that I got to play with and the folks that I still get to engage with, whether it's people on my cast who I love like family, whether it's new alumni, old alumni that I get to meet, that many of them I get to call friends nowadays, or whether it's talking to people like you. I mean, hell, I got freaking 300 people tuning in right now to listen to me yap about Survivor. It's fucking awesome. It's great, you know, and that's something I'm very grateful for. So if I got to deal with Rome slinging some arrows every few months because he's bored or wants to, I literally don't know. And it means that the other side of that coin is I get to keep doing stuff like this and have the friends and family that I have. It's a trade off I'll take a million times out of a million. And it feels great. So I'll tell you what, let's wrap this up here. Um, if you got some questions, if you got concerns, roasts, praise, whatever it may be, go ahead, drop it in the chat. I always like scrolling through the chat. Towards the end of the show, do a little bit of Q&A. It can be about what we're talking about tonight. It can be about season 47. Like I said, I just binged the entire thing in 48 hours. So I got, you know, tons of thoughts on 47. It can be about 50, who they're out there right now. I don't quite know where they're at, but I imagine they got to be around like mergatory or maybe just merged. So hoping Genevieve is still there, hoping Genevieve is killing everybody while remaining under the radar and will go on to win this thing. It's honestly the only person I care about out there right now is Genevieve. Once she goes, if she goes, she's not gonna go. She's gonna win the whole thing. I don't even want to put that out there, but like I will have such little interest in what happens on 50 after Genevieve. Right, that's the only person I'm rooting for. Genevieve is winning. Trust. I do trust. I do trust. I do. I promise I do. But yeah, get some questions in there. Let's do a little bit of Q&A before I wrap this up. And if we don't, and I'm scrolling back because I know people have left a lot of questions in there over the course of the episode. And just a reminder, stick around here, both on Twitter and on the Reality After Show YouTube channel, because me and Johnny Fairplay are going to be talking to the man who was not a forgotten Survivor player, but rather tried to forget Survivor, Raymond Bledsoe. He's got a really cool project that he's working on called Healing from Survivor. I cannot wait to talk about it. I cannot wait to get his perspective on the casting process of 50. I cannot wait to hear a little bit about what he makes of the 50 cast. We have a lot to talk about with Raymond and his journey through the Survivor world, and it's going to be awesome. So 9 p.m. is when that starts. 40 minutes from now is when we're going to be kicking that off. Going to have Johnny Fairplay with me interviewing Raymond Bledsoe. Here's a fun question from Brian Kelly. Do you like the Mergatory? Personally, I do not. I think that like this is not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but like if you're all on the same beach, by definition of the word merged, you have merged. Like I'll never understand that. I'll never understand this idea of like you're not merged. Like yes, you are merged. And this whole like earn the merge thing, I think is silly. I think that like maybe you could just do a tribe swap just a mandatory tribe swap every season where you get swapped into 2 tribes. I know, harebrained idea, and then whoever comes out of that earns the merge and earns the right to be on the same beach. But like, I think it's silly from a literal standpoint, right? Like, you are not earning the merge. You have quite literally merged the tribes together onto one beach. So I think from a literal standpoint, it doesn't work. I think from a viewership standpoint, it's just confusing. I think it confuses a lot of people when they watch it. Like, oh, are we, okay, I'm watching them and they're all on the same beach, but they're not merged yet. And now they got to earn the merge. Okay. So, like, if they get there, are they going to be on the jury? Are they not going to be on the jury? They don't have buffs yet. Are they going to get the buffs? Okay. Like, it's just this whole thing of what is going on here? Why are there so many small steps behind this big step, right? It's like big step one of the game. You walk onto the beach and you have your starting tribe, right? Next big step of the game is you all get to merge. And then it's like between those 2 steps, there's like a bunch of these little tiny steps that you have to take to, like, you get like 98% of the way there. And then that 2% takes like, you know, it's like if you're watching a loading screen and the bar goes up like 98% in like 5 minutes, and then that last 2% takes like 30 minutes. That's what Mergatory feels like to me. Where it's like, okay, we've been very smoothly getting all the way up to this next big phase of the game, and then it's like, stop, skirt, little step, little step, little step, little step. Okay, now you're here. And it's like, oh, well, why? Like, just why? Does it make it more fun to watch? I don't believe it does. Does it make it a more compelling game for the players? I don't believe it does. I think that you could very easily just merge everybody on the beach, give everybody their merge buff, and then make it a longer process to make it onto the jury. I have no issue with that. If you want to make it, instead of like 1 vote or 2 votes to be on the jury like they do now, make it like 3 or 4 votes. So you're merged for 3 or 4 votes. Maybe you merge a bit earlier, and then you have to fight harder to make it to the jury. Like that, it just makes more sense to me. I think it's easier to digest for viewers. I think it creates less caginess in the game as well. I think a big part of Mergatory is that it's so cagey and everybody just wants the easiest possible vote so that they can get through these next couple steps, so that they can get that merge buff and they can get a jury seat. So it's like, I don't want to play hard right now. I don't want to do anything crazy right now. I just want to make it to the next phase of the game. And the more rounds you add to get to that next big phase, the less compelling and aggressive gameplay you're going to have in those phases, because people know that it's like, I got to get through this like bop, 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 bop before the bam. And it's like those bop, 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 bop episodes. I'm not really going to do anything. You want to vote out this person? Okay, we're going to vote out this person. And I don't care. I'm not going to try to make any big moves right now. I'm not going to try to show my personality too much, because I'm not going to get screwed at the 1 yard line. No worse feeling than that. So I think Mergatory takes away from the game in many different facets, both for the viewers and for the players. But Jeff likes it, so it's probably never going to go anywhere. All right, I'll tell you what. We've been going for almost an hour 10 right now. So let's try to get a couple more questions in here before we wrap it up. Gabe, do you have a preference between 2 starting tribes or 3? This is something that I wrestle with a lot, because my gut answer is 2. And the reason that I say 2 is that oftentimes you will have everybody have to go to tribal. Everybody has to set up their strategic alliances and actually implement them into the game at some point. And I think when you have 3 tribes, you open up the door for people not going to tribal. And it's like that is a core part of the game since day 1, season 1, is that, like, you go to tribal council. And I think 3 tribes takes that away from a lot of the players in the game. And it's a reason I think 47 is so great, is because everybody went to tribal. There was no disaster tribe. My Tuku only went once, but then Gata and Lavo both went twice. It was very balanced, and you got to see everybody go to tribal. You got to see everybody everybody's strategic and social relationships actually be implemented into the early game. And so like it meant something, you know? And I would also say that's just from a viewership perspective. From a player perspective, I would say that like you have to go to tribal to solidify the relationships that you make. And this is something that Tevin Davis said from season 46 at our live RHAB in New York in the fall of 2024. And I don't remember the exact context of it, but the point he made was like, you need to go to tribal. Going to tribal is a good thing because you figure stuff out. And when you go to tribal, you are forced to put names down on paper and people are forced to deliver on the promises that they make you. And once you deliver on those promises, I can tell you, like, the perfect example for me was me and Caroline. Caroline did not trust me as far as she could throw me for those first few days. But after we got to the TK vote, and when I told her for days, if we go to tribal, I'm writing TK's name down. And she said, that's what I want to do too. And it was definitely what Sue wanted to do. And when we finally got to that tribal, me and Caroline's relationship was like night and day after voting out TK. And the reason for that was because we had that tangible trust, something that we could point to and say, he said he was going to do this, and then he did it. That happened. And then you see a tribe like Nami and 46, Tevin and Hunter and Soda and Liz and Venus, like completely rip apart at the seams as soon as they hit the merge, and everyone's turning on everybody and there's no real alliances there. And Tevin and Soda were the two closest people. And then Tevin turns on Soda, and then Tevin gets voted out the very next tribal. Like the reason for all that is because they never had to go to tribal. I'm sure there are deeper reasons that I don't see and that we don't see as viewers. I'm almost positive there are. But like we don't see that as viewers, and they never had to actually implement a lot of the promises they were making. Tevin and Soda, we're number ones. We're never going to turn on each other. We don't even have to talk strategy. We always know we're on the same page. Yeah, but like the merge and mergatory is super hectic and things get crazy. And if you don't have those tangible votes to lean on, then it doesn't really mean a whole lot when stuff gets crazy and chaotic because you don't know if you can trust that person. They've just told you that you can. And I think that you run into that issue that I'm describing far more often with 3 tribes than you do with 2. Everyone's got to go to tribal when you got 2 tribes. And when everybody goes to tribal, everyone has to either deliver or cross on their promises. And that tells you a lot about who you're playing with as a player. And for the viewers, it tells you a lot about where these people stand with their strategic and social relationships with everybody else they're playing. So I think 2 tribes generally is a better format. That's not to say that 3 tribes can't work. Like I just said on 47, I think 3 tribes worked great. I thought it was awesome. And I think it was the best of the 3 tribe format, the best that has to offer. But I just think that the potential for it to go sour is so much more real and so much more prevalent. And I think we have how many new era seasons now to just confirm that, right? Where it's just the same people going to tribal over and over and over again. And something I've talked about a whole lot on this show, and it's something that was very pertinent for season 48, was that like people were getting voted out at Mergatory that we had no idea who they were. Who was Charity, right? Like, who was Chrissy? And that's not disparaging to them in any way. I'm sure that they're very compelling people. I've met Chrissy before, and I think she's awesome. I've never had the pleasure of meeting Charity. But like these were people that I think were great in person. And when they got voted off, I was like, who the hell even is that? And it's not because they weren't compelling on TV. It's, I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's not definitely because they weren't compelling on TV. It's not because they weren't worthy of the screen time or they weren't worthy of having their story being told. It's because they never went to tribal. And when you don't go to tribal, there's a whole second half of the episode after the challenge that you are left out of. that goes to the tribe that is going to tribal. And when every single week for 4 or 5 weeks, it's the same tribe, it's not fun to watch. And you take meaningful screen time away from people that you casted on the show, that you decided were going to be so compelling that they were going to get people to want to tune in next week. And when those people aren't going to tribal council early in the game, you lose out on the potential of that casting. And it doesn't have to be like that. If somebody's just a dud cast, like if somebody's just a dud cast member, all right, that happens. But there are, I believe, many great cast members who never got to show that, who never got to offer something to the fans, who never got to offer something to the show and the game because they just never went to tribal council early on. And then early in the merge, they got voted off. And it was like, well, who even was that person? But you don't know because we had to spend week after week after week after week with this same tribe. And that's something that is very unique to a 3-tribe format. All right, I'll tell you what, folks. I'm going to wrap it right there so I can save at least a little bit of my voice for when we get Raymond on. In 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes, me, Johnny Fairplay, Raymond Bledsoe, talking Survivor 50, talking about his Survivor journey, which has been very tumultuous by his own account, talking a little bit about his new project, Healing from Survivor. What all that is even about, I don't know a whole lot about it other than the research I've done, which has been very surface level because I want to hear about it from the man himself. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be on Twitter. We're going to be on the Reality After Show YouTube channel, talking with Raymond Bledsoe at 9 p.m. Eastern time, less than 30 minutes. Cannot wait to see you there. Thank you, everybody. 350 people tuning in, the most I've ever had. Who would have thought? Good stuff. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you in about 30 minutes right here from the Reality After Show. This has been episode 5 of Gabe's Big Move.